Hello everyone, this is Cobalt. This is the next video in my character analysis series for Brawlhalla. Stick around till the end to hear about entering the giveaway to win community colors, emotes, weapon skins, sidekicks, avatars, or even the battle pass, and voting for the next legends. And if you want to skip all this and get straight into the information, there's a timestamp in the description, and don't forget to subscribe so you can keep up with the release of your favorite legend. In these analyses, I wanted to focus solely on the character's signatures. Light attack combos are covered much more in depth than I ever could elsewhere and function pseudo-comparably for all characters of that weapon class. So I'm not going to be discussing the general neutral of the character with their weapons unless it pertains in some way to their signatures. Firstly, I want to give clear descriptions of the terminology I'll be using. Startup frames are the amount of frames that happen after a move has begun until the first hitbox of the move becomes active. Active frames are the duration of frames that the move contains hitboxes that can collide with your opponent. FAF, or First Actionable Frame, is the first frame available where your character is able to move again after the move has been started. For all of this data, I use the character's jump to display the first actionable frame. Lastly, On Miss refers to the move not connecting with an opponent, and On Hit refers to the move making contact with an opponent.
I'm going to be doing my analysis today on Mako. This will be the only analysis this week, so be sure to savor this one. Mako is the daughter of Poseidon, and after attacking Atlantis, the residents were so terrified that they chose to sink the city. It doesn't make much sense to me. Seems like sinking things would make things harder for them, but what do I know? She also bit off Zeus's foot, so that's a thing. Additionally, extra artwork for today's video has been provided by my man Deb, so please go check out his Twitter and give him a follow. His artwork is excellent. Mako's weapons are Katars and Greatsword. She's the second character to have the Greatsword as a weapon and seems to use it to great effect. Upon her release, she was an immediate competitive threat, and despite her illegality in the recent Mammoth Cup, I am certain that she would have seen as much competitive play as Jae-Yun thanks to the dominance of the Greatsword. But I am here to analyze her signatures, so let's do that. Mako has an incredibly high speed and above average attack. Her dexterity and defense are lower at 4, and her stats are very similar to Petra's, albeit slightly reversed. She looks to be a glass cannon with high KO power and speed with an easy time getting knocked out herself, at least based on her stats. So, do her signatures help her to be successful as a character, or is the overwhelming dominance of the Greatsword in the current metagame enough to keep her relevant? Well, let's find out. Let's start with her Katars. Katar's side sig has 21 frames of startup, active frames from 22 to 31 with an FAF of 53. It functions the same on miss as it does on hit. Mako dips down into the stage showing nothing but her fin. She moves forward and then releases a slice from her Katars as she erupts from the water. It's worth noting that she doesn't have an active hitbox during the travel duration of the move, and Mako has to release the sig to perform the slice or reach the maximum travel distance. It has average startup, okay active frames, and average FAF. It's an okay sig, and honestly resembles a Suri's side sig on sword a fair bit. It's got some utility on it and coverage directly in front of her, but it has enough end lag that it's punishable on miss. It's not a bad sig necessarily, just kind of niche in terms of its utility. Katar's neutral sig has 15 frames of startup, active frames from 16 to 29 with an FAF of 56. It functions differently on miss than it does on hit. Should the move connect, it functions as a command grab with a new FAF of 72. Mako jumps upward with a massive chomp. The surrounding water forms the shape of jaws, and if it connects with the opponent, she flips forward and sends them flying downward with a huge amount of force. The sig heavily mimics the concept of a Suri's Katar neutral sig as well. There's a distinct difference, however, between the two. A Suri's moves slightly forward during her attack, but Mako travels straight upward, so the translation is not exact in terms of spacing. However, it can convert out of neutral light if the opponent neutral air dodges. It has a pretty low startup and an average FAF. Mako is still airborne once she's able to move again, and there's about a half second of airborne time where she's vulnerable, so take that time to get in there with an aerial or a gravity cancelled signature. This is a really good sig on her kit in my opinion, and thanks to its low startup, it's a really good option for opponents trying to go high or jump over Mako. It provides really good coverage for her and offers her a lot of utility. Excellent sig in my opinion. Katar's down sig, well, anyway, it has 20 frames of startup, active frames from 21 to 44 with an FAF of 55. It functions the same on miss as it does on hit. Mako creates a whirlpool around her with active hitboxes that she can move laterally during the duration of this move. It has surprisingly low amounts of end lag at only 11 frames. It has average startup and FAF, but the active frames on this move are pretty freaking good. You can chase people with it thanks to the movement options that it offers, and thanks to the low amount of end lag on it, it can be pretty challenging to punish. The sig offers decent coverage since it hits stacked opponents, though its startup is only average, so it may not be your best option on Katars, but can certainly be useful in certain situations. Watch out whenever attempting to punish this and make sure your timing is correct. Next up is her Greatsword. Greatsword's side sig has 16 frames of startup, active frames from 17 to 34 and 36 with an FAF of 66. It functions differently on miss than it does on hit. Should the move connect, it converts into a second and third hit with new active frames from 17 to 34, 36 to 38, and 54 to 61 with a new FAF of 81. Mako summons a large wave and rides it forward. It has a pretty large travel distance if charged, and it has active hitboxes on the wave during her travel duration. If it hits, Mako jumps upward and slices her opponent with her Greatsword. This move has decent startup and above average FAF. It has alright active frames and a fair bit of end lag, half a second to be exact, so be sure to punish it on miss, but the travel distance can potentially get her out of punish range, so take that into account. It has decent coverage in front of her as well, and has a solid KO option. Greatsword neutral sig has 19 frames of startup, active frames from 20 to 27 with an FAF of 57. It functions differently on miss than it does on hit. Should the move connect, it surprisingly does not function as a command grab, but just as a second hit with active frames from 57 to 62 with a new FAF of 80. Mako jumps upward, reaching out to bite her opponent with the same water jaws as her Katars neutral sig. If the initial hit connects, it converts into a second hit where she does a front flip and slams her Greatsword into her opponent. The startup and FAF on this move is about average, and it has a decent amount of end lag on miss, so it can be pretty punishable. Mako was almost grounded before she's able to move again, so it's got some potential to be punished pretty hard. This has a threat coverage on jumping opponents as well as those recovering high, so it's got some pretty solid range and coverage for her. Greatsword down sig has 14 frames of startup, active frames from 15 to 20 and 27 to 41 with an FAF of 59. It functions the same on miss as it does on hit. Mako jumps upward, forcing a ball of water below her before slamming her Greatsword into the ground and sending waves crashing around her. This move has pretty low startup, a decent amount of active frames, and slightly above average FAF. It has quite a bit of range as well, sending waves away from her all along the ground. It has okay end lag, but it's still punishable on miss, and a normal jump will evade this move and set you up for a punish option. This move has utility for stacked opponents and punishing whiffed attacks thanks to its low startup and lengthy active frames. Not a bad sig in my opinion. So, overall, her sigs are honestly kind of similar to Asuri's. Her Katar side sig, Katar neutral sig, and Greatsword neutral sig all look like they were heavily based off of Asuri's kit, and that makes their utility comparable as well. They all have okay frame data, several of them have really good startup, but her end lag on most of them is reasonably punishable, with the exception probably of Katar's down sig. I'd say that her neutral sigs are probably the best on her kit since they send you downward and have useful coverage options for jumping opponents. They're probably the most iconic as well, and if slide charged off stage can get some really early kills near the bottom thanks to her solid attack stat. I think that her sigs definitely have a lot of utility. People can spam them, but a lot of them are pretty easy to punish thanks to their end lag. Neutral sig on Katars, for instance, has almost half a second of end lag, which is plenty of time to punish it if you're near her with an aerial. I don't think that her sigs are the absolute best, but I think that they're all really good, and have similar frame data and utility to Asuri's sigs, who has already proven to be a solid metagame threat. I think that her sigs are beneficial to her kit, especially given her weapon combination, and I have no doubt that she's going to be a competitively viable threat whenever she's playable and even after the Greatsword nerfs that I'm pretty sure are coming soon. Today's code to put down in the comments is Street Sharks, along with your Twitter handle, and if you get that reference, I appreciate it. I'll be streaming live on Twitch as soon as this video goes live, so stop by and say hello. I'll be doing battles with viewers, so come play me. Stream is starting now. Tune in Monday for coverage on the next highest voted legend from this week. I'll be continuing this once a day, Monday through Friday, over the next 10 weeks until all 50 legends are covered. So thanks for joining me on this ride. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the release of your favorite legend, and hope to see you back for the next one. Once again, I'm Cobalt, and thanks for watching.